I was asked by the Hanhola of Beis Chana LEC in Miami to speak to the girls, high school girls, a little bit about Chosai and Adar, and also a little bit take the opportunity and talk about what does it mean to be a Chayzer and the experiences that I had. So first we're going to start with Chosai and Adar. We all know Chosai and Adar is the day that the Rebbe had a stroke by the Eil. And really never recovered from that stroke, and eventually this led to Gimel Tammuz. I know there was Tafshin Nun Beis, 1992, and Gimel Tammuz was Tafshin Nun Dalet. I remember I was in New York. Me and my wife were in New York for that Shabbos, even though we lived here, but we happened to be in New York by Chosai Oder, because there was a chasanem Tuesday night in Montreal from a nephew of mine. So we already came to New York for Shabbos, and then we were there Sunday to take dollars from the Rebbe, and then we were there Monday, and Monday night we traveled with a bus, chartered bus to Montreal. That Sunday, the dollars lasted very, very long. I think maybe it was even the longest one that was ever. I think it was 7 hours. It was a long line, and the Rebbe already didn't feel good. Best raya is that the Shas Rebbe was giving the dollars. Towards the end, he asked if there's still a long line. B'chlal, the Rebbe never did that. He always, if anybody wanted to stop somebody from going to get lekach again, get a dollar or kosher bracha, the Rebbe was very upset because he said his opinion is to give to everybody mashpia. But the Rebbe should ask, is there still a long line? That was very strange. They told the Rebbe that they're going to stop the line on the spot. The Rebbe said, no, all those that are in line in the shul, I think that's what it was, that the line went into the shul, they should continue. And more than that, they should stop. So that's what they did. And the line was very long. And I remember I was also there with my wife, and we also got $1. It was the last time the Rebbe gave dollars. Then by Ma'ariv, after that, the Rebbe davened Ma'ariv in the shul, small crowd, but they saw right away that there's something not so simple, because it took very long. Krishma took the Rebbe very long. It looked like the Rebbe blocked out in the middle and wasn't feeling well. Then the next day, the Rebbe went to the Eil. As the Seder was, that Sunday the Rebbe would give dollars, and Monday he would go to the Eil. Originally, it wasn't like that. Originally, he would give dollars on Sunday, and after he finished giving the dollars, he would go to the Eil. Once, Rabbi Yitzchak Freidin, who was a cousin of ours, he was a photographer, and he spoke to the Rebbe very close. He said to the Rebbe, I suggest that why go to the Eil right after dollars? Why don't you divide it into 2 days? And the Rebbe said to him that to do that, I would have to be Matin Neder. But a while later, maybe it was after the Rebbe was Matin Neder at Rosh, I don't know, the Rebbe, that it changed, and he went to the Eil on Monday. So this Sunday was what this is. Monday, the Rebbe in the morning, the Rebbe went to the Eil, but they said that in the morning, we heard that later, that Monday morning, the Rebbe had a terrible, terrible headache. And really, this was a siman of a stroke, chas v'sholom, but that's what it was. The doctor didn't realize it, whatever, I don't know exactly how it went. And the Rebbe went to the Eil. The Rebbe was by the Eil, always the Seder was that people would wait to daven mincha with the Rebbe after he comes back. And the Rebbe would, those years already come back very late, much after the Shkia. So everyone was waiting, shul downstairs, waiting for the Rebbe to come. And we heard that the Rebbe fell by the Eil. Now, fell by the Eil, we thought meant that he slipped and fell. But Lapel, we heard later right away that it wasn't that he fell, but he had a stroke. And in a stroke, they were brought to Hatzola, and it seemed to, some say that the Rebbe even motioned that he doesn't want to go to the hospital, wants to go back to 770. Some say that's not what he said, but they understood because in Tov Shalom Ches, when the Rebbe had a heart attack, the Rebbe clearly said he doesn't want to go to the hospital. So they assumed, I think that's what it was. But the first ambulance from Hatzola that came was the Hatzola from Queens, because that's the closest to the Eil. The driver from that Hatzola ambulance, they put the Rebbe into that ambulance, and he was ready to go to the hospital someplace in that area. I don't know how he did or what the people told him, but that's what he was ready to do. So he once by a dinner spoke later years, and he told the story, and he said that the people told him that the Rebbe shouldn't go to the hospital, should go to 770, but he insisted. They put the Rebbe into this ambulance, And he started it and it didn't start. For some reason, it didn't start. He came with it, everything was fine. It just didn't start. He tried and tried and tried, it didn't start. By that time already, the Hatzalah ambulance of Crown Heights had come to the Oil. They took the Rebbe out of this ambulance, put the Rebbe into the other ambulance to take him to Crown Heights. And as soon as they did that, and this ambulance driver from Queens went into his ambulance, and the ambulance started. So very strange, but if the Rebbe didn't want, so obviously that's how it's going to be. There's a pasuk that says that it's saying Yirei of Yaseh, whatever those that fear Hashem, that tzaddikim want, that's what Eibusha does. So that's what happened. So they took him to 770, and then they had the doctors there, etc., etc. Now, one of the main problems was that because of this, the Rebbe wasn't able to talk. And one of the main ways that Rebbe was mashpia, sitting to Yidden, to the whole world, was through his speech. He'd speak, and here he couldn't talk. It's interesting that a few weeks before that, on Gimel Shvat, the Rebbe spoke, Psiche, and he said, but spoke about the Friedrich Rebbe in connection to Yud Shvat. And one of the things he mentioned that the last years, the Friedrich Rebbe was hard for him to talk. He couldn't talk. So, and the Rebbe said that even the doctor asked the Friedrich Rebbe that how is it possible that he can't talk it? His whole hashpoah comes through Dibur. How did they wish to make it? And the Rebbe went on into bring out the question. But the bottom line the Rebbe said is that since the Rebbe, talking about the Friedrich Rebbe, wasn't able to talk, we have to become his mouthpiece. He has to be the one. We have to be the ones to talk and to bring the Rebbe's message to the world. That's what the Rebbe wrote out from here. Now, obviously, this was a lesson to us. The Rebbe, we know the Rebbe is Magdim Refuah L'Makeh, so the Rebbe first already said, before it happened to him, that the whole idea of the Rebbe not being able to talk, so that means that there's a lesson for us that we have to be the ones to talk for the Rebbe. And we can't imagine what Anash felt, what the Chassidim felt when this happened. And from there till from Chav Zayin Oder till Gimel Tammuz, they were davening and people were traveling, going to the Eil, and there were people who were fasting and all trying to be mispalel that the Rebbe should get healthy again. Now we know what it says in the Geras HaKodesh in Tanya, Shechaya Atzadik Einam Chayim Sorim Kiyim Chayim Ruchnim. Life of a tzaddik is not physical life, but spiritual life, which is, he says, Amunah, Ave, and Yireh. B'meila, we the whole time knew that his life is dependent on Ruchnius. B'meila, the more Torah mitzvahs, which is Ruchnius, we add, there will be more health for the Rebbe, because his health is dependent on the Ruchnius of it. I remember once when the Rebbe was bringing the Sukkah, somebody came over to the Rebbe in the middle of the Fabring and gave the Rebbe a bottle of mashke, and they said this is a bottle of mashke that he brought from Shazar. And when he gave it to the Rebbe, he said to the Rebbe, and Shazar asked me to tell the Rebbe, give the Rebbe a bracha, the Rebbe was mein gesund. So the Rebbe says to him, Ihr könnt euch helfen mein gesund. You could also help my health. And he couldn't understand, how could he help the Rebbe's health? He's not a doctor and he's not a pharmacist, and how could he help? So he looked at the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, as ihr wird meisim sein in Torah mitzvahs, it is help my gesund. If you will add Torah mitzvahs, it will help my gesund, my health. Also remember once, this, what I just said now, I actually saw it myself, but then I heard, I don't know, I wasn't there, that there was somebody on Yechidas, that he was, or a doctor or someone, or a pharmacist, and he saw the Rebbe coughing a lot. So he told the Rebbe that he has a very good medicine that could help cough. And the Rebbe said to him, when the Yidden will do tshuva, that's when I'm going to start coughing. In other words, his cough is dependent on the Aved of Yidden, dependent on Yiddishkeit. So everyone was Meisiv and Torah mitzvahs, and the feeling of Anash was so great sorrow and great pain. So what happened came Gimel Tammuz. So after Gimel Tammuz, we have to understand that what the Rebbe said before, when the Geya, that we have to be his mouthpiece, is more relevant. And we have to know that the Rebbe is still mashpia to us. Whatever he was mashpia before, he's still mashpia now, not from down here in this world, because he's not here with Gashmias. Even though Baruchnius, not even though for sure Baruchnius is here, like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, Tzadika de Ispata de Ishtaket Kula Alma Yatim B'Chayei, a tzaddik that passes away, is found in all the worlds more than before. And the Alter Rebbe says all the worlds means including Elam Hazeh. The tzaddik here is Elam Hazeh, in Elam Hazeh, more even than before. And he's mashpia, just like it says by Moshe Rabbeinu, ma lahal eimid mishamish, afkan eimid mishamish. Just like Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was here alive in this world, was mishamish served, and one of the pshatim is he served the Yidden, so to now he does everything for the sake of the Yidden. So the same thing with the Gay, the Moshe Rabbeinu of our generation, that for sure he is mashpia and works for us down up in Shemayim. And therefore, the iskashas that we had at the Rebbe before still exists. And we have to be merciful in these kashas, we're machazing these kashas as time passes, because we know that the Rebbe is still with us, even though physically we don't see him, physically we don't hear him. We still have to be mekusher, and we have to do the Rebbe's work that he wanted us to do. We have to be the Rebbe's mouthpiece, talking and bringing the message of the Rebbe, and behaving the way the Rebbe wants, and thinking and strengthening these kashas to the Rebbe. That's the first opinion of what Chazayin Oder means to us. Then the second thing that I was asked to mention was concerning the union of Chazorah. So I want to say that the union of Chazorah, to Chazar over to repeat what the Rebbe said, is something that was very, very important, especially by the Rebbe, because by other the Rabbeim, they used to write down themselves. Mainly the Rabbeim would say Memorim. They wouldn't fabring and say Siches. This was started mainly by the Frierdiker Rebbe and then by the Rebbe. But the other Rabbeim, like the Rebbe Rashab, the Rebbe Marash, and Zaman Tzedek, they would just say Memorim every Shabbos and Maimer, and then they would write down the Maimer themselves. Even then, there was Chazorah. That means after the Rebbe said the Maimer, the Chassidim would get together, and one of them would Chazer, and another one would help, and they would Chazer open the Maimer. By the other Rabbeim, it was even more than that. After they Chazer the Maimer between themselves, they would go into the Rebbe the next day, and one of the Chazrim would Chazer the Maimer in front of the Rebbe. So the Rebbe would be able to fix if they made some mistakes, or sometimes they would even ask a question, shot in the mind. But that wasn't by that, by the Rebbe. Shot by the Frierdiker Rebbe, that wasn't by the Rebbe. Also, the Rebbe didn't write down his own Torah. The Rebbe would speak many hours, say Mamorin, say Siches. Many times it was Fabringas of many hours, and the Rebbe wouldn't write it down. And there were people who would remember, and then they would chazer it and write it down. Rabbi Yoel Khan, he's the main Chayzer. That Leben is 120 bis 180, the Leben Mashiach, and then continue Chazorah. What the Rebbe said, Rabbi Yoel was and is the main Chayzer. He's called the Chayzer Roshi. Actually, the Rebbe once gave him, they say, Sheyuder, Yidalef, I don't know, told him to drink a whole cup of wine and gave him a brocha and told him, so gedenken was meret. You should remember. Now, we gave him a brocha in addition to the fact that he has a gewaldige head, a gewaldige zikaron, a gewaldige memory, and a gewaldige tfisa to be tefes, to grasp what the Rebbe was saying. Gewaldig. Besides that, he had a brocha from the Rebbe. But as the time passed, and he had so many other things that he had to do, that he had to do the Rebbe wanted to do Sefer Erkim, so there was a need for more people to help him. But the truth is, always by Chazorah, he would Chazer, and there was always Bochrim around, the Yingelite around, sitting there and listening to Chazorah and helping. But they needed to be a little bit more official than there should be official of people who would be called Chayzrim or whatever, helping Chazorah, that they should be their achrayas to do it. So I remember it was Yuchvat Tovshin Chavov, which is 1967. I remember there was myself and a few more of the friends. We were sitting in 770 the night of Yuchvat. The Rebbe would farbring the second night. If Yuchvat, let's say, was on the Sunday, the Rebbe would farbring Sunday night. Or for Tuesday, it was Tuesday night. But the night before, there was no farbring. So we were sitting in 770 learning Mishnayos. And Rabbi Yom Klein, one of the Maskirim, comes over to us and he says to us that Rabbi Chadakov would like to see you. And he had a list of names who to ask. And there were a few Bochum that he asked that Rabbi Chadakov wants to see you. Now, anybody who knows what was going on, that Rabbi Chadakov called you, Rabbi Chadakov was mamish, the first hand of the Rebbe, so it meant something special, something from the Rebbe. So we were surprised. What does Rabbi Chadakov want with these few Bochum? So when we came in, he says to us, the Rebbe asked if you people, you Bochum, are ready to take upon yourself the responsibility of being official to help in Chazorah. Are you ready to do it? Are you ready to makabel? So what do you think we said? Well, obviously we said, for sure, we will accept it. And he said, do you know what that responsibility means? So we said, yes. So he said, good, he's going to give it over to the Rebbe. That was that night before Yuchvat. The next night was the big Yuchvat Farbringen. Then there was the Shabbos Farbringen. But after that big Yuchvat Farbringen, we got a message that the Rebbe asked why didn't we come up by the Farbrengen to the Rebbe to say L'chaim in honor of this position that we got to be official helping a Chazorah? The Rebbe said that since they didn't go up each by Farbrengen, let them come up Shabbos, Shabbos Parshas B'Shalach. So that's exactly what happened. Shabbos, we went up to the bima where the Rebbe was sitting, all four of us, and the first person that walked over to the Rebbe said L'chaim. The Rebbe looks at him and the Rebbe says, boss, like, what is this for? In other words, we knew that the Rebbe wanted, we should verbally say what this is going to be. So the first one said to the Rebbe, my name is Achunter, help me Chazorah. The Rebbe said, L'chaim v'levracha. The next one came over, the Rebbe said, du eichet, you too? Yeah. So he said, L'chaim v'levracha. And the same thing, all four. Then we went back to our place. As we went back to our place, Rabbi Yael, at that time, was standing on the other side. We stood. Our place was on the right side of the Rebbe. In other words, the Rebbe was facing on the right hand of the Rebbe, and Rabbi Yael was standing on the left side. So the Rebbe turns around to Rabbi Yael and he said, no, Abadi, you should say L'chaim. So he started saying L'chaim. Then the Rebbe says, well, or you go to them or let them come to you. It should be together. So Rabbi Yael started climbing up to come to our side. And the Rebbe looks at him and the Rebbe says with a smile, it's a lotion of the Gemara. Have to be the aliyah, has to be of the owner. In other words, they should come to you, not you to them. So we actually went over to his side. Then the Rebbe turns around to us and makes with his hand to all of us like this. Like when the Rebbe did this, the Rebbe meant take a big cup, say L'chaim in a full big cup. So we all took it and we all said L'chaim in the big cup. And then the Rebbe says if there are any parents of these bochrim, should also say L'chaim. So of one bocher, it was his father was there and his grandfather was there. Another bocher, his father wasn't, my father wasn't there because we lived in Cleveland, so he wasn't there. Another bocher, his father for some reason wasn't there. Then the Rebbe turns around to another father, and he was sitting in the middle of the shul. The Rebbe from far says to him, shows him he should say L'chaim, and the Rebbe says to him, Yofe koyach haben v'koyach hav, which means the son is greater than the father. But it's not an insult to the father, obviously, because in that Farbrengen, a siche before, the Rebbe quoted this Maimer Chazal, and the Rebbe touched Tuis that one simple pshat is that the son is Yofe better than the father. But there's another pshat, Yofe koyach haben, the koyach of the son is good. Where does he get that goodness? Mi koyach hav. He takes it from the father. So Mela, it was actually not an insult, but it was a compliment to the father, I guess. And so he also said L'chaim. And you could imagine how, what the excitement in by us was and the nervousness was. So after that, the Rebbe said another siche. And I have to be honest and say the truth, that siche that the Rebbe said after this, I didn't remember a word. The whole purpose we were there is to be able to chazer. Didn't remember because they're so nervous. But from then on, we would be officially by Chazorah. We always were by Chazorah. I guess that's why the Rebbe chose us, because we were always there. But this time that it was official, and we said by Chazorah, Rabbi Yael would Chazorah, and sometimes we'd remind him something, make a change. There were questions that came up, and we were very, very much involved. So one of the things Chazorah means to Chazer over what the Rebbe said, whether it's the Maimorim or the Siches, we have to Chazer over. Another thing that came along with this is that after the Farbrengen, after almost every Farbrengen, questions came up. The Rebbe said things, the Rebbe spoke a lot, but obviously he didn't say Kol HaTorah, Kula, the whole Torah, that one Farbrengen. So a lot of things he would say, but then there are questions about it and you need to answer for it. And it could answer for it. And so the Chayzrim would write to the Rebbe. Mainly it was Rabbi Yael who would write to the Rebbe, and the Chayzrim would help, and we would look over and we would discuss it. So this was also part of what we did, is to be part of the questions asked by the Rebbe. Actually, one of the times that Rabbi Yael went into Yechidus, so the Rebbe said, you know, when you write in the Shilas, you should make sure to discuss it with other people. So he says to the Rebbe, I do. So the Rebbe asked him, with whom do you discuss it? This is what he told me right after Yechidus. So he tells the Rebbe, I discuss it with Rabbi Schapiro. The Rebbe smiled, and the Rebbe said to him, that's not what I mean. He is a Talmud of yours, so you have to discuss it with a Ipcha Mistavrenik. Ipcha Mistavrenik means somebody, anything you say, he'll say the opposite. He'll find the reasons to say the opposite. So when somebody says the opposite, and then you go into the question back and forth, you'll come out with more understanding. So he said, discuss it mit ha'ipchen nistavrenik. That's what he told me. Somebody who says always verkehrt, always the opposite. But this was part of what we're doing, is to make sure that the questions that come into the Rebbe would write answers, and then sometimes there were questions on the Rebbe's answers, back and forth and back and forth. It made you feel mamish like, a Talmud and a Rav, that in learning. This was all in the Teichen of the Sichos. The Rebbe would say something, you would ask, and it would answer, you go back and forth. The feeling that you got was very, very, very special. Even though, on the other hand, if you wrote something that the Rebbe didn't feel was so good, many times he would be very, very sharp. He would write sharp answers, saying, how could you even think of such a thing? And how could you, very, very, very sharp answers. But this is how it went on, that you remember the Fabrengen. Sometimes it was very, very hard. For instance, take Simchas Torah. Imagine when Simchas Torah came out on a Thursday, Friday. Atzeres was Thursday, Simchas Torah was Friday. So it was a 3-day yontif. So listen to this, what the Fabrengens were. Thursday night, which the night of Simchas Torah, was a Fabrengen before HaKofis, about 3-4 hours. The next night, Friday night, there was a Fabrengen for about 2 hours. The next day was Shabbos Breishis, so after davening in the morning, there was a Fabrengen of a few hours. Then at night, Motzei, close to the Shkia of Shabbos Breishis, was the big Simchas Torah Fabrengen. Usually it was on Simchas Torah, close to the end of the day, before the Shkia, the Rebbe would wash and to go out till 2-3 in the morning, maybe longer, and then Kosher Brocha. But if it was a Kriyas like this, then it came out that it was Motzei the first day. So it came out, there were 4 Fabrengens in a row, with no time in between to have Chazorah. And then later, after Yontev, we would sit down and have Chazorah on the first Fabrengen, and the second Fabrengen, and the third Fabrengen, and the fourth Fabrengen. And there's so many hours there, and to not mix up what he said when. The truth is, before, by HaKofis, when we would wait for HaKofis, I would stand next to Rabbi, right next to the Rebbe up front, slow, quietly, between ourselves, we would go over Nakudas of what the Rebbe said, and that would help a little bit. Also, by the Motzei Yontev, the Fabrengen, someone would make Havdolah when the Zman came up, and then he would take notes of what the Rebbe said, which would help out. But still, sometimes I look now at, it probably could be of these 3-4 Fabrengens, you could have 100 pages, 120 pages, and who could remember this? So, Abad Rabbi has a Gvaldik ahead, and we try to remember whatever we can. But as I look back now, I can't imagine how that was. How in the world could you remember that? And it's all Yom Tov Shabbos. It's not a tape recorder. You can't have a tape recorder. This is what the job was. But you see, you look back on all the sikhs those years, and there was a special keiches that the Rebbe gave that you're able to remember. This was when the Geir Chazorah. But besides that came the union of writing it down, making hanochas. Hanochas, the word hanocha means when you take the sikha and you write it on paper. That's called hanocha. You put it down on the paper. So we came to the hanochas. So originally in the Yuds, the 50s, and then the beginning of the 60s, Rabbi was the only one that could write it. Some people wrote themselves notes, but here, because Rabbi was so much work to do, and Rabbi wanted him to get involved in Sefer HaErkim and other things, so it was a few of us who used to write down nochas. I have to say that Avram Galitsky was a big major writer, and Rabbi Goldstein. And I was very much involved in it. They used to write it down. I would look it over and add and take off. And this, I was very much involved in writing hanochas. So the hanochas that we have from Tovshin Chovov on till probably Tovshin Lamed Gimel, then other people took over. Then I don't know. I left New York to come to Miami, but then we were involved in writing the hanochas. So that's another part besides trying to remember Al Chazer, but it's writing the hanochas. Then there's another part here. And that is writing Likutei Sichos. That really is not part of the writing Hanochas, but that was something else. Likutei Sichos from Chelik Aleph to Chelik Tes was written by Rabbi Yoel. Now the truth is, from Chelik Hey to Chelik Tes, those volumes, I was also a little bit involved with her, together with Rabbi Yoel, but mainly as Rabbi Yoel. And these are the Sichos that came out in different years. Chelik Aleph and Beis came out weekly. That was from Shavuos Tovshin Yutes, the Shavuos Tovshin Yutes, that later turned into 2 volumes. Every week would come out a sikh and turned into Aleph Beis. Then from Reishis Tovshin Chov Gimel to Reishis Tovshin Chov Dalet, those were weekly sikhs that came out later in Chelik Dalet, Gimel and Dalet. Then there was a hefsek, and then started 2 years Lamed and Lamed Aleph, and a little bit in Chov Tes, that the weekly sikhs that turned into the Chalokim of Hey to Tes. And there already I was a little bit involved. But then, Tovshin Lamed Beis, the Rebbe stopped being Magi the Sichas. Now that the Rebbe stopped, so that's it. So a few of us got together and we came up with an idea that we should, the Rebbe wanted him to do other things, maybe we should try to write Likkutei Sichos. So we came the summer of Lamed Aleph, Lamed Beis I mean, and we prepared a few parshas. Reishis, Noach, Lech Lecha, Vayera, Chaisora, Tildes, Vayetze. And we prepared it in Lashon Kodesh. Till then it was in Yiddish. We thought maybe it'll be better in Lashon Kodesh. So we prepared in Lashon Kodesh. We gave it into the Rebbe. We wrote down our names, who are the people who wrote it, and asking the Rebbe to start being Magi the Sichos again. We didn't hear anything from the Rebbe a whole summer. They'll know we didn't know, yes, the Rebbe is masking, not masking. We have no idea. Then it came Tishrei. Everyone knows how busy the Rebbe is Tishrei, so we couldn't get it. But finally, we're thinking, if it has to come out for Breishis, the Rebbe has to be Magi soon. Came till Sukkot and the Rebbe, nothing. We didn't hear a word. The Rebbe would sometimes Magi Sicha on Nishan Rabbah at night. We know from previous years if there was any occasion for the Magi Sicha. In other words, it means that after the Rebbe finished saying Bamidbar in his room, before he came down to Shul to say Tilim, he would Magi Sicha. So we thought maybe that's going to happen. So I remember all of the ones that wrote the Sichas were standing around the Rebbe's room, Shana Rabbah at night, hoping that before the Rebbe came down to Tilim, Rabbi Groner went into the Rebbe like he always would, came out, we were hoping he would come out with a Sicha Mugya. He walked out, nothing. So we didn't know what to do. Simchas Torah then was, I think, Tuesday and Wednesday. I think Monday and Tuesday. And if it has to come up for Breishis, not too much time after Yontif. So we decided like this. At Kosher Broch and Motzei Simchas Torah, we are all, three of us who are writing the Sichas, plus the two who were much involved in the practical part of it, in running the Mesa, the Badlafot Sichas. That was a Mesa that is connected to the Sichas. We will all, five of us, go together to Kosher Brochem, show our presence, so the Rebbe will see us, and this will like bring a point. So we walked by, the Rebbe gave each one of us Kosher Brochem. And then he took a bottle that he used to give to the Shluchim, bottles. He took a little bottle, mashke, gave it to one of us, and he said with a gigantic smile, "Das ist fast Badla Fotza Sichas." So we were sure. As the Rebbe smiled, we were sure. So the next day, the day after morning, after Simchas Torah, after the big Farbrengen, no one came to 770 early. We came to 770 early, hoping that the Rebbe would come from home that morning with the Sicha Mugya. The Rebbe comes from home to 770, must have been 1 o'clock. And as soon as he came in, Rabbi Groner went in, and the Rebbe would give him any answers, anything he wrote. And we thought he'd come out with the Sicha, nothing doing. So we didn't know what to do. So already Wednesday, and the Sicha has to come out for Shabbos. So we did something which is a little chutzpah, but we took a risk. We made a copy of that Sicha that we prepared for Breishis, and we wrote a little note and clipped it together with the Sicha. We wrote that we're planning, we're all like this, we're planning to give out this Sicha for Shabbos Parshat Breishis. And we're asking you to be Magia, which is a very big chutzpah to say, what do you mean you're giving out? But that's what we thought we'll try. So we gave it in again to the Rebbe. A few hours later, the Sicha came out. Mugya, Rebbe was Magi in Sicha. And from then on, every week came out. So Tovshin Lamed Gimel, Lamed Dalet came out. Lamed Gimel, I was working on Sichas in New York. Lamed Dalet, I already moved to Miami, but I worked on it from here. I would send the Sichas from here to the people there, and they would give it into the Rebbe. Lamed Hey, the Rebbe stopped being Magia. Lamed Vov, Lamed Zayin, the Rebbe continued. And Lamed Ches, the Rebbe had his heart attack. So the people who wrote the Sichas were thinking maybe to stop giving in. And the Rebbe asked Tam Breishis, the Rebbe asked, where's the Sicha? Then the Pashas Noach, the Rebbe was Magia, the Sicha in bed. Breishis also, Noach also. He actually wrote a whole paragraph, not a paragraph, a few paragraphs, a whole seif. He wrote with his Ksav Yad, laying in bed. I saw the Ksav Yad. Could see it's a little scribbly because he was laying in bed when he was writing. And from then on, till the last one, Vayachel Tovshin Nun Beis, right before Chozayin Adar, came out weekly every Sicha. And that's how the volumes became. After there was a few Sichas for each parsha turned into volumes. So it turned into Yud till you Dalet, then turned into later from Tesvav further on. So, and then till that Vayakil. Vayakil is not the last Sikha with the Sikhas because it's in Shmeis, but it's the last Sikha that Rebbe was Magia. When we're thinking back, the time when the Rebbe was Magia, the Sikhas, it was some special time of feeling that you had towards the Rebbe. Even though the Rebbe was Magia, was good, and sometimes he would be, like I said before, even by answers of Shilas, he would be sharp. Certainly when he was Magia, the Sikhas, if you wrote something that was not what the Rebbe thought you should write, the Rebbe fixed many things. The Rebbe was Magia, the Sikha meant he added and he took off and he crossed out and he added ha'oras and he changed things a lot of times. Because what working on making the Sikhas means not just taking the Sikha. See, some people think, look, the Sikhas came out every time after the Fabrengen, that you wrote down the Fabrengen. That's not. That was the Hanochas. Because the Sikhas was a different thing. You would take an old Sikha that the Rebbe said in a certain old Fabrengen of years before, and you picked one Sikha that has to do with that week's Parsha, and you would prepare it for the Rebbe to be Magia. Prepare it means to look through all the sources, look through everything, and you would see the depth of the Sikha much more than it looked the way it was said superficially. And you have to prepare it and write it down in a way like a sefer, not just you write down words of a speech, a Sikha. But you have to work on it to make it in a sefer, but to see what the Rebbe wanted. So the Rebbe would add a lot, and the Rebbe would fix, knowing that, he's the one to do it. But if the Rebbe felt that there was something that you should have known better and you didn't, the Rebbe was very sharp. The word mafil, which means outrageous, was written many times. And I remember every time he gave in a Sikha for Shabbos, till the Rebbe was Magia, gave it out, I couldn't sleep. My mind was thinking, no, what's going to be here? What he might write, who knows what kind of sharp words. Just give you an example of one of the sharp things he wrote, that in the Sikha, one of the Sikhas was mentioned that the word Knani means a seicher, means a merchant. And we wrote a Maramokim that it's a posik in Yeshaya. Yeshaya it says, it says the word Knani Yoda Meiznim Mirmo, and there it means a seicher. The truth is, there's a Rashi in Chumash, which Rashi says in Parshas Vayeshev that it means a seicher. But we wrote the Maramokim of the posik in Tanakh. So the Rebbe added in big words Pirush Rashi Vayeshev, and he wrote the Rashi. And then on the side he wrote, very sharp, not one of you guys learn chitas. Actually, one of the sikhas of where people are learning now, which are sikha the Parsha Kisisa in Chelik Yudalev, so there the Rebbe left empty space to fill in a maramokim of a posik. And we filled in writing the words Siso, Parsha Kisisa, this is posik. But the Rebbe to say there was that if you quoted the posik from the Parsha that the sikha was about, he would call it Parsha Seinu, our Parsha. But this was a Parsha Sikha to Kisisa, and it said Sisa. So the Rebbe crossed it out, wrote on the side Parsha Seinu, and then next to it he wrote in big words Mavil. He didn't expect it because the Rebbe was medayik in every word. So if we're talking about the feeling of it, the feeling is it was very scary, but on the other hand, it was a great schus to be able to work closely with the Rebbe in not stam in askonas, but close to the Rebbe in the Rebbe's Torah, and the Rebbe answering and the Rebbe questioning and answering. And the fact that the Rebbe was very sharp, on one hand, it gets you very scared, but on the other hand, that shows a certain kiru. The Rebbe would not do this to other people. Only somebody he felt he was able to do it. So that's what the feeling was. So when we come to Chazai and Adar, which that's at the time when we stopped hearing the Rebbe, and the Rebbe stopped being Magia, Siches, and everything, we should at least remind ourselves what it was when the Rebbe was doing this, how important it was to the Rebbe, and how much time the Rebbe put in, and how much time the Rebbe put in Fabrengen, how much time the Rebbe put in Magia, the Siches. So that gives us an achrayas that we should learn the Rebbe's Torah. So everybody should strengthen the discussions and strengthen the learning the Rebbe's Torah. And Allah Zolahov Makosher and Freilich and Pesach. And Nismach Gula Legula, we should come to Yudalef Nisan soon, strengthening discussions then to Pesach. But the main thing is this all should lead us to the Gula Shlema, that all these hardships that we have now should become bottled, and we should go Likras Mashiach Tzidkeinu B'Korev Mamash.